So the way that Adi Dar speaks about these three types, he says that they're strategies that we develop very early on to deal with the fact of being in a body, right? Because who we really are is spirit. Yeah, he basically says that when we're born, right, and when we start, this is before we're really conscious. We're limitless consciousness, spirit, right? But we're not fully aware of it yet. And then we find ourselves in a body in this appearance, right? So you could one way to see the types is their strategies of dealing with this. Different strategies that we develop to deal with it. So the metaphor I wanted to share with you that I came up with was like riding a bike, right? So in the metaphor, the bike is the body and the mind, right? And so here we are, we're born into this world, and we find ourselves on this bike, right, as a body-mind, right? So what do the vitals do? They're like, great, let's ride this thing. I can go here, I can go there, I can do that, I can have this experience, you see, they...
Downhill.
Speed.
Huh?
Downhill.
So they completely tend to identify with the bike, particularly the physical bodily aspect, but they're also seeking to escape, because we're all seeking to escape the limitation, this limitation. Right? The way the vitals do it is through exhausting themselves. Exhausting themselves. So what does it feel like after you ejaculate, right? That's kind of the vitals release. Of course, we all do that. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. It says that the vital finds relief and deals with this fundamental limit to riding the bike, and giving themselves to it. Now the peculiar finds themselves on the bike and they're like, what the fuck is this? I just want to get off this thing. This isn't me, it's so limited. I am, they have, peculiars, you see, they have some intuition alive as they've developed, that they're who they are transcends the body mind, you see. So that's why
bikes.
Huh?
I like bikes. I'm a peculiar.
So a lot of peculiars, they have that intuition. But as I was saying, and I was illustrating it a bit from my own story, they want to escape the bike, being a body in the world. Having to deal with, you've got to wash it and clean it and earn money so you can survive as a body. You have to get a bank account, insurance, and do any of you relate to this? It's all like a burden. You have to deal with all this stuff just to be a body in a world. And I'm not a body, really. So it's a burden, you see, for the peculiar. So the peculiar just wants to get the fuck off the bike. So it spends its whole life, it's in the bike, there's no getting away from it. It's like, I'm not really here, I'm not really on the bike. That's where I am, up there in the clouds. Infinite consciousness. Oh, crash. Oh, don't have enough money to pay the rent. Shit, get depressed. See what I mean? So that's the peculiar. The solid, right, is on the bike. It's like, right, takes control of the bike. Right? So it's got the GPS, it's got the speedometer, it's got the maps. So it's, it's more comfortable with being on the bike than the peculiar. But the way that the solid relieves itself from this limit of being in a body is taking complete control of it. And then I'll be all right. So that's the peculiar strategy. So the peculiar is riding around like this. Check the map here.
Goes to live in
And the vital's going.
Goes to live in
The peculiar is like, just get me out of here. So there you go. Does that help to illustrate?
And one more thing came to my mind, like solid and vital, they don't mix that much, like in primary and secondary.
Well, it can do. So
Yeah.
it can do.
Okay.
It can do, but as I said, in general,
It's
generally,
more it's like the others.
Yeah. generally, if you're peculiar, it's more common to be secondary solid than secondary vital. More common, but not always.
Mm.
If you're vital, it's more common to be secondary peculiar.
And
Then-
they're on the two sides.
Huh?
They are on the two sides.
Yeah, yeah.
Also like.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Okay.
But as generally, but not always, you see, a solid is weak in the heart, a peculiar is weak in the hara, and a vital is weak in the head, in the positive sense. See, and there's often a resistance. Yeah, because there's something positive. You see, there's nothing negative about any of this in its pure form. So vitals tend to be resistant to developing the intellect, to discriminating, to study. You know, using that muscle. It's like, oh no, just give me a beer, man. I'm on my bike. I don't need to know exactly where we're going.
Pedal hard enough, I'll get there.
The peculiars tend to be very resistant to vital existence, to being in a body, dealing with functional reality. It all seems very boring and ordinary and mundane to peculiars. Right? But when a peculiar actually starts to embrace that, well then it changes, you see, and you start to realize the spirit is also here. This is also spirit. Body, mind and world. It's Shakti. You see, it's all an expression of the divine. And then the peculiar starts to become more integrated and also starts to embody some vital force, some power. Because peculiars tend to be weak. Their energy, their transmission tends to be weak. And a bit airy, and you know what I mean? They tend to physical weakness, and they also tend to sickness. And then a solid tends to be weak in the feeling center. So they tend to be repressed, shut down. Adidas said that solids are basically shut down from the neck down. They're alive from the neck up and shut down. They're trying to control the rest.
Just the head.
So that's in general, but it's not always the case. You can be a peculiar secondary vital. You can be a solid secondary peculiar. You just have to feel into it.
Yeah, through life things can change.
Yeah, well, no, well generally a sign if you're evolving, if you're genuinely evolving and developing, your dominant character will become more disciplined, naturally. So you might have to begin by doing certain practices to discipline it. But the whole point of discipline is, you know, it's like riding a bike. Again, you start off with the training wheels, right? But then once you can let go of the wheels, then it becomes your natural inclination. So as you evolve, you start to experience your dominant character as being less of a pathology, right? It's not a pathological vital, or a pathological peculiar, or a pathological solid, right? You still are a vital, or peculiar, or solid. You'll always be that, but you're not dramatizing that in a very egocentric way. Do you understand? So that becomes more disciplined, and then your weak area, where you've tended to avoid or deny, starts to come online. And you start, so the experiences, you actually start to feel more empowered, more integrated, more complete. You know, all of these dimensions you see are coming online. They're unblocking, they're opening. You see? And so that there's a psychophysical dimension to all this, to spiritual awakening. It's not just about, you know, I'm just resting in pure consciousness. Yeah. You know, a lot of spiritual traditions, they just point in that direction, you see. That's the waking up. But if you also embrace the growing up, then it's about bringing this, body, mind, peculiar, vital, whatever our character is, into alignment with that true consciousness, that true being that we are.
Thinking talking and doing
Yeah.
all aligned.
Physical, emotional, mental.